Okay, so I wanted to make this video to show how wanted to make this video to show how to create well not how to create a Flask app, but I wanted to go start off with how do you start creating a Docker container for your development environment or your dev environment because Docker is a very powerful tool that I feel everyone should understand or know. Um, and so to that end, we'll simply just go through how do you first create your first Docker image. For example, we'll be using Flask. How do you create your Docker image? How do you start it? And then how do we use the simple Hello World in Flask, running it through Docker, using the docs without having to find uh, a YouTube video or anything. So this is just going to kind of give you, hopefully from here, you can take this information and apply it using your own strategies. So simply to put, we'll start off with the Flask documentation, and it says install Python version, and we want 3.9 or newer. And with these dependencies, we don't need to worry about these dependencies just at this moment because all we really need to install is Flask. And so let's first start off by installing Flask. So it tells us to install Flask, we want to first create our virtual environment and pip install Flask inside of our virtual environment. So if we don't have to create this .vem file as our virtual environment is a Docker container. So our entire Python container or Python image or virtual image is going to be inside this container already. So we don't need to manually create a ven file on a computer because it's already containerized. It's already in its own virtual environment. So the only thing we really need to do is run this pip install Flask. And the easiest way I find to do this is to use a requirements file. But put simply, first, we'll go and start with our first two steps, getting a virtual environment and installing Flask. So we can go to the Docker reference docs here, and we can find um, from, which creates a new build stage from a base image. And so this is going to basically create our .vem for us or install Python for us. We're going to want to install the version of Python we want, as well as uh, this specific version of Python or newer. So we can go to the Docker Hub here, and we can search Python. Search Python. We can search Python, and we can see these two hardened images here. And we don't really need a hardened image because we're not creating a massive app. We might want to, but the base images or the official images is just works just as well. And we can go instead of the overview section, we can go to the tags section, so we can see all of the different images that the Python uh, Docker Hub section has, and we can see Trixie, which was pushed by an hour ago by this guy, Slim Trixie, Slim Bookworm, Slim, latest, Bookworm, Trixie, and whatnot. From here, we could probably compare what vulnerabilities there is compared to the other versions or whatnot. But the easiest one, because we're going to be building all of this, so we don't need all of the latest stuff of Python. We just need a simple Python app that can run Python code. So we're going to do this Python Slim here. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to go here, and we're going to paste it. We're going to get rid of, because we don't need to pull it. We're using the from command to pull it. So we're going to take Python Slim here, and we're going to put that right here where it says from. Because instead of having to do the Docker pull command, our Docker file will automatically do that. So we can pull our base image or tell our Docker file or Docker program that we're pulling from this base image. Then we want to set, so if we look in the Docker docs, um, our, first of all, we don't need to do this section, but just yet. The instructions hasn't told us, but just to get ahead of the game, because now we need to install Flask. And the two ways we can do that are, well, there's one way. is we're gonna have it run a build command, which is gonna install Flask for us. It's gonna install using pip. It's gonna do pip3 install Flask, just like we see here. Pip install Flask. And so we want to install pip, and so we're gonna run a uh, where is run? We're gonna execute a build command, which is gonna run basically just a terminal command for it, and it's gonna install all of our dependencies. But at the moment, the only dependency we have is Flask. The other way I tend to do this that I find easier is because instead of having a specific like go through and be like, okay, what are all my requirements again, and having like a section where this is now run pip3 install, and then requirement one, I mean dependency one, dependency two, etc. Uh, we can just have it all in a single file for us. And so the way we do that is we'll go and I'll uncomment these lines of codes, and we can see copy requirements.txt and pip3 install -r requirements.txt. And so if we go into our file folder or file structure here, close this, and we open our requirements .txt file, we can see that it has this Flask, which is the exact same as our pip3 install Flask, because all we're doing is we're taking the uh, that file and we're copying it to our virtual container, or the container we just created from this Python Slim. And so to that end, we want to add a workdir or a working directory to tell the computer, hey, where are we going to install this? Because after it runs this command, this copy command, it doesn't know where the uh, you can't requirements. It doesn't know where the working directory is, so it's going to just copy it over to something like this. So specifying the working directory, we specify it to this path, which makes it very easy for us to visualize and as well as know where things are on our container. And so we've copied it over, and we've now installed our requirements. From here, we can go to the next step, which is the quick start guide, which is right here. And so now we can do the quick start and get a minimal Flask app up. And to that end, a lot of Flask apps, if you've ever built a Flask website before, any type of Flask app, you'll know that usually you have this app directory that will contain all of your Python code. And this will create your basically your entire web environment, right? And so from here, we'll just create our python.init.py file to create our hello world. And then we can scroll through and you can see first we've imported Flask and did all this stuff, created our Flask object, and then created a route to tell it to where to point or what to redirect or what function to run when we visit this endpoint. And it's going to return hello world. And so if we do write a, we can save all this, and then we can scroll down a little bit. It says Flask dash dash app dash hello run. And so we can go back, and now it's telling us how do you run your Flask app. So we can see it goes, you can write this command. If you read a little bit more, application discovery behavior, as a shortcut, the app.py or wsgpy, you don't have to use the dash app command. Uh, this launches a very simple built-in server, which is good enough for testing. Now head up to your local host and say hello. And if you want an external visible server that is only accessible from your own computer and not from any other in the network, this is the default because in debug mode, the user of the application can execute arbitrary Python code on your computer. If you have the debugger disabled or trust users on your network, you can make the server publicly available by simply adding the dash dash host. So we can start our Flask server just by specifying Flask run. Then we can specify localhost if we want it to be available for other users on our network. And this tells our operating system to listen to all public IPs. And so we're gonna add that to our Docker file here because we want to run our Flask app. So we're going to go to here, and we can go to we want to copy over the files. So we want to copy over our init file, which is inside of this app directory. So this is going to basically create the slash root slash app slash underscore underscore init dot py. So this is kind of the file structure we're working with right now. Is this is going to be where a Flask app is. So now we want to run Flask run, and we probably could get rid of this host here, but we want to create an entry point where it's going to basically run another one of these build commands. But this is going to be our start of our script. If we go to the documentation, we can see entry point here, specify the default executable. So basically, start your app, start running your app. What is the script to start it? If you had a build script, you would put that in here as well, for example. Like, for example, if you had your Flask app automatically run a database upgrade or migrate, you could have that run here as well and just put that in a bash script. But we're going to keep it like this, and we're going to do write A. And then now we have this Docker file, which is going to create a Docker image. And then from that Docker image, we can run the Docker container. But there's a tool called Docker Compose that makes running these Docker images 100 times easier, because now for this Flask app, I have to now point a port over to my local machine. If I didn't have this, I would have to specify local hosts and all of that other stuff. So we can go to Compose, which is just a YAML, so it makes it very easy. And we can see this simple YAML script, which this is basically how you're going to see every compose a look. We can, for example, there's this Docker or PLC lab called Gaspod HMI lab, which is basically just a bunch of ICS, industrial control system um, containers that you can practice hacking real world things on. So we can go into, like, for example, the HMI. We can go to the Docker file here, and we can see, like, that's the exact same thing they do. They literally have it Python run.py exposes a port, which this isn't actually just exposing a port. This is just telling it uh, what port it is exposing. This is more for us, the user, so we can know what port it's using. And then we can go to app and see that this is all a Flask app. And then we could go into compose, which is probably going to be in here, here, Control F, compose. And then here you can see checks the Docker Compose version. If I were to go down a little more, probably would run compose. Yeah, it creates a virtual environment called compose, creates it, removes orphans. It's probably one here, build. And so we're gonna want to run that on our machine here. Is we want to basically go to here, Control T, compose, reference, and we can go here, and we could see, for example, what the what they give it as example. For example, here, services, image, commands, whatnot. So from here, we can specify where we want to build. So we have our Docker file inside of our local directory here. So we can just say build here currently. We can specify the working directory again. And then now we tell it what ports to bind. So we want to bind port 5000 to port 5000. So when we go to localhost 5000, we can see the website. Give it a stop signal, so when we press Control C, it knows to exit. And you want to create a bind val versus a bind volume, or I mean a named volume, not a bind volume, because a bind volume gives you some permission issues, as well as we want it to be as similar to our local machine as it is to our container. We could honestly get rid of this, and it would not make a difference for our program at the moment. So now if we go back into nvim, so we have our compose here. So we can go back to our Flask. We can see, and now we can finally run our Flask app. So we can do docker compose sudo docker compose up dash dash build, because we want to specify that it's going to build from the most recent version. So if we change that uh, Docker image, it'll rebuild it rather than going through and just restarting it and using the stashed image it already has. we can do docker compose build. And so now we can see each of the steps. We can see that it's going to pull from Python Slim. It's going to set the working directory. It's going to copy a working directory. It's going to run the install command. And now if you notice, it says cached. That's because I've already ran docker compose up.build, and all of these sections were the same as last time. And because of that, Docker will cache those. And so now instead of having to reinstall all of the requirements or repull this Python image, it'll just save that for you. So copies over app because the app wasn't cached, it was changed, and then exports it, creates our image, and then recreates the container for us. And then we can see it exposes it on these two IP addresses. One of them I'm pretty sure is my tailnet. So we can go here, click on the IP address it gives us here, and it says, oh, did HTTP request and hello world. Then we can do control. You can go back to here. We can go Control C, Docker compose down in case, but in case any containers, we can see both of them stop. We can do Docker compose down dash remove fins. And now if I did sudo in front of it, it'd be helpful. And there we go. We can see it gets rid of all of the extra containers that we had running on our machine. And so we can go Control L. And so now let's say I go into nvim and I change what it returns to there here to goodbye world. Put a docker compose down, up, build. And we can see again, it goes through, it runs the cached sections. And if you saw, that ran extremely quickly because it didn't have to reinstall all this stuff. It just used the cached layers, copied over our new change. And now if I were to click our new IP address, where I just reload this old one, you can see it says goodbye world. So it makes it very easy to change your Python code, edit your website, and whatnot. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something.